was combination of food regulation with medicine regulation. What was the outcome of that? America is the most unhealthy nation on earth. No one needs to be persuaded of that. They have a messy health system, and they have a food industry that has created a mess. So they have two industries, food and drugs, commercialized through lobbies of legislation that does not protect the public. They have ended up the most unhealthy nation on earth. They have realized their mistake. They are moving away from that. We Kenyans, at this point in time, do we need to make the mistake of those who have realized their mistake? What is so clever about making a mistake others have made and realized it? As you've been said, US is moving away from it. Food is a critical area for health. It is, you cannot overemphasize that the food was the first prescription by God himself. If you eat well, you will be healthy. It needs focus in legislation. You cannot mix it in a very amorphous piece of legislation that does not recognize its importance. You have to ask, what will be the role of professionals in the questions of food safety in that amorphous arrangement that is being proposed? Medicines are also very critical for health. And you need focus in the area of medicine regulation. What will be the role of professionals in that amorphous arrangement? It is clear from the proposed regulatory authority that out of 9 members of that board, you have only a token presence of somebody with a pharmaceutical background. It's not even stated that would be a pharmacist. And somebody with something to do with the food safety. The rest shows the generic approach to legislation. It is top-heavy with administrators, with lawyers, with finance people. We have to ask, what competence in this very technical area are these people going to bring into the critical areas of health and the critical areas of food safety? It is not going to happen. What will happen in that legislation typically, as happened in America, it will be a body that will be lobbied by the business interest. The end result will be what? That the market will be flooded with products that are making the Americans unhealthy. Kenyans, do we want to go that direction? That in America, once the food people have finished, then the American business, medical business, then get in. They exploit the legislation that is weak to make the Americans equally unhealthy. What are we saying here? That the approach that is being proposed for us here is ill-advised, it is untimely, it is happening at a time when others have realized their mistake. In other countries of the world, where people are healthier, we have seen they have separate legislations for these two areas. Self-regulation as an aspect, which has recently been understood in Kenya and taken up by all professions, that if you want to regulate an area, you must rely more on self-regulation, which means you involve the professionals whose input is critical to that area, as opposed to mandarins who know nothing about that technical area, and yet they are the ones who are put in the position to make those decisions. We are saying at this point in time, when Kenya is moving in the direction to reinforce self-regulation, meaning involve professionals who are technically endowed in these areas, this is a move in the wrong direction. When you only include token representation in the proposed authority, that is ill-advised. So what are we proposing? The Health Act, if you can make that observation, is supposed to be the authority or the regulation that is advising the direction being taken. But it is very clear that Part 7 of the Health Act, which is already in force, proposes to set up a single regulatory authority to deal with health products and health technologies. In nowhere does he talk about foods. If anything, in that part, we could include therapeutic foods. We could include nutraceuticals, but propose to bring an arrangement that brings mandazi and then control of sukuma wiki into this piece of legislation is ill-advised, to say the very least. We are saying, because of the critical need for health, when Kenyans we eat well, that we take care of safety, biosafety issues, that is an area that needs focus, that includes those professionals that are in that area. And the correct balance to recognize the input of even the health people in the nutrition. That really means that we are proposing. There is a need to, for example, set up an NFSA, National Food Safety Authority. A National Food Safety Authority will be looking at all those issues that concern food. If you look in the United States, which is what I exactly said, this bill was copied from America, who combined Food and Drug Administration, and they thought this would serve them well. What I said, well, because they ended up with a weak legislation that they did not adequately address the issue of food safety, quality of food, standards of foods. Americans have been bombarded by the food industry, the American food industry business interest. And there is no doubt in my mind, I have visited America many times. When I say that the Americans are the most unhealthy people in the world, that's exactly what it is. And you have seen the NCDs in America are huge business. The non-communicable diseases, hypertension, diabetes. The greatest market in the world for this is America. The multinationals are based in America. That is the production of medicines. So when the food industry is through making Americans unhealthy because of the poor regulation and because of the lobbyists who have pushed for weak legislation on food safety, then the drug industry takes over and tells you, look, we can sort out your problem. Even as you are 100 kilos weightier than you should be, we have exactly the solution for you as the drug industry. So I am saying, and I will repeat, that making the mistake the Americans made and became the most unhealthy people on earth will make Kenyans unhealthy, just like it did in America. So what I'm suggesting is that we need focused legislation on food safety issues. That means when we are growing our foods, the issue of residues that are causing, that are carcinogens, that are creating all these conditions that we are now seeing that used to be not prevalent in earlier days when our people ate natural food. All these things that have gotten into our soils, that when you go to the supermarket, you see nice looking leafy vegetables which have been grown in areas with the highly accumulated chemicals, lead and all of that. Is it a wonder that we are having all this increasing prevalence of cancers in this country? So I'm saying, as Kenyans, at this stage in our development, we need to take seriously the question of food and food standards. The foods that are grown, where they are grown, checking the pesticide levels. If you go to Europe today, if you want to export anything to Europe today as Kenyan, you are subjected to very high standards of pesticides or residue levels. In this country, nobody cares the residue levels of the veggies you eat. When you go to the supermarkets, when you see those nice looking leafy vegetables, nobody tells you that they are carcinogens and all those lead things that are accumulated in there because they have been grown in those sewage dump sites. What I am saying is that you need a regulation that seriously looks at that area. The food manufactured in industry, what are the additives there? What do they contain? Do they declare what exactly is contained? They tell you this is low fat, this is low sugar, but yet nobody is looking at that. Kenyans are being deceived. You are eating stuff that is making you unhealthy. So I mean, and I said, and I repeat, if you do not focus, if you do not have a focused legislation that takes care of foods and standards of foods, in both the grown foods and the manufactured foods, yes, Kenyans will become the most unhealthy people, like the Americans. I suppose we shall be very clever that we shall make the mistake the Americans made, if that is what we are thinking. But for me, that's not the direction to go. We need to protect our people. And the laws are in place in any society to protect the public. Those laws must be good laws. Those laws must be the kind of laws that can actually do exactly that, what they intended to do, to protect the interests of the public. But if you're going to have laws that merely have tokenism in their representation, for example, of professional input, then certainly what is going to happen is that you are only going to have the influence of lobbyists who will make sure that you do not have the kind of demands by law, declaration of content and all of that, that you need to make sure Kenyans are protected. That is exactly what I am saying. By mixing foods with drugs, that is exactly what we are going to achieve. Lack of focus and leaving it to the lobbies all the space in the world they need without the input of experts. We are talking about biosafety. We are talking about genetically modified foods. Have we really addressed these things? These things, again, we are commercializing foods from where? From America. The Monsantos of this world. Where are they based? In America. We are told that if you can, we must accept these things now. How to produce. And yet, what our mothers did, they produced the food, they kept the seed, and they replanted those quality selected seeds. We are now told you can only do seeds from Monsanto. Has anybody really demonstrated to us conclusively as Kenyans that these are safe? I am saying that we have to be very careful in the kind of legislation that we are putting forth, that it must be legislation that protects Kenyans. And the critical element in that is in that regulatory control, who is involved? Do we have the input of professionals? Can they influence what happens? Because in the regulations, when you see the law, then you see the regulations that springs from that. That is actually informed by the kind of composition you have in that board, in that regulator. So if you have a weak regulator, you have people who don't know what they're doing there, simply because there is a generic composition of a board that deals with other things, not highly technical areas, you are going to have a problem. I think I want to be quoted on that, that if we go ahead with this kind of law that is generic, that has not focused on the critical areas of food, the critical areas of drugs, where that focus needs to be, then we are not going to achieve a healthy nation. Our cost of health will be extremely high. If you look at America, that is what it is. Affordable care, they've brought about Obamacare, and they're doing all kinds of things. But in America, they have a huge problem. It is clear, it's there. Anybody want to check. So, I think it is time as Kenyans that we must face the fact, we must have the courage to speak to these issues. And I want to be counted as having that courage to speak to these issues, that we must come up with the legislation that is going to help our people. That is what law is about. Professionals must be involved. That is what professionals are about. Otherwise, let us not train them. We don't need them in the key areas that in determining what happens. Let's not train them. Let's not deceive ourselves. Thank you.
It's okay.
Be honest with ourselves. We don't need professionals in Kenya. Let us dismantle them. Let us dismantle degrees that are teaching professionals. If we are not going to involve them in the decision-making processes, we cannot have it both ways. As Kenyans, we have come of age. We have to use the resources that we have ourselves created. We cannot allow tokenism in areas that decisions must be made by people who know what they should be doing. To conclude, public interest must advise these things. The law that we are proposing, public interest dictates focus in this area so that the right attention is given to each area. And Kenyans, let us give the word. We have shown the world that we can lead. We are not a nation of followers, we are a nation of leaders. We cannot follow even America, who have realized the mistakes they've made. Let us take the cue and lead the way. God has made Kenya a great country to lead, not to follow. Thank you.